couple of years I do a video with recommendations for a few tabletop RPGs, with the recommendations all based around video games. This year I'm changing things up. Since I've stepped up my anime review game a little bit this year, I'm giving some recommendations based around anime and manga. Links to where you can find all of these games will be in the show notes, including referral links if possible, if you want to support the show. Now, there have been some existing tabletop RPGs published in the US, directly adapting some anime series. Canadian publisher Guardians of Order put out a series of rulebooks using their Tri-Stat system, as seen in the game Big Eyes, Small Mouth, based on some major anime series from their time, from Sailor Moon and Tenchi Muyo to Trigun and Slayers. They even put out ultimate fan guides for the first arc of Revolutionary Girl Utena and Serial Experiments Lain. Guardians of Order was in negotiations with Gainax to put out one of their ultimate fan guides for Neon Genesis Evangelion, which would give mechanical stats for all of the characters in the show and the EVA units, plus a synopsis of the show itself. But they jumped the gun and announced the book before they'd signed the contract, causing things to go south and for them not to get the deal at all. R. Talzorian Games, publisher of Mechton Zeta and Cyberpunk 2020, used a stripped-down version of their interlock system called Fusion to make an RPG based on Armored Trooper VOTOMS, and gave similar treatment to the Bubblegum Crisis OVAs. However, those games are not going to be the focus of this episode. It's not like these aren't worth checking out, they certainly are. However, these are often the first picks that come to mind when it comes to talking about anime and RPGs, and I want to take a different route. So, as always, in no particular order, here are 5 RPG recommendations based on your anime preferences. If you like Log Horizon, you might like 13th Age. One of the things that was said about D&D 4th Edition, both in terms of positive and negative lights, is that the game felt a lot like an MMO. Class roles were defined in the same context that MMO roles are, like controller, DPS, tank, that sort of thing. And the ideas behind at-will, encounter, and daily powers made them seem a lot like managing cooldowns. Now, you can use D&D 5th Edition on its own to run a Log Horizon-inspired campaign. Indeed, one of the YouTubers I follow, Caliber, ran a Log Horizon campaign using 5th Edition and put the video of it on his YouTube channel, link in the doobly-doo. However, I think in particular, while the general mechanics of 4th Edition work well for emulating an MMO, the version used in 13th Age works particularly well. One of the rules used in 13th Age in character generation is that each character has one thing about them that makes them completely unique in that game's world. And I think that provides some interesting potential from a gameplay standpoint, particularly since it gives you a way to set up things for representing the unique skills that each character has or develops in Log Horizon later on in the series, during the show's second season. 13th Age is available as a PDF from DriveThruRPG, and is in print from Amazon.com and probably at your friendly local game store. If you like Hayate the Combat Butler, you might like Maid. A small but still growing number of Japanese tabletop RPGs have been getting translated into English and getting official releases in the United States. While they're not plentiful yet, and we haven't gotten the heavy hitters like Sword World, we've still gotten interesting games like Tenra Bancho Zero and Double Cross, the latter of which I recommended in the last one of these episodes. Among these is Maid. Like Hayate the Combat Butler itself, Maid is a game about interpersonal relationships. The game puts the players in the suits and frilly dresses of a group of maids and butlers involved with taking care of a luxurious mansion. The players must deal with their own interpersonal relationships, their relationships with their master or mistress, and any of their requests, no matter how bizarre they may seem. The system itself can cover material from the silly to the dramatic, so you can handle anything from Hayate to Mahoromatic. But the reason why I'm picking Hayate over, say, Black Butler, is that in Hayate, while Nagi is one of the characters who drives the action, Hayate, and for that matter Maria, carry out the action. Nagi gives Hayate directives, instructions. She's a GMPC who sets the plot in motion, most often. And then Hayate is the one who has to deal with the repercussions of Nagi's actions. Or of those actions are Nagi being in a funk leading to Hayate having to spend the day at a hotel, or Nagi not wanting to go to school, and Hayate having to motivate her. Maid is available as a PDF from DriveThruRPG, and in a print-on-demand version. If you like superhero anime and manga, you should check out the works of Steve Kenson. This is something of a fudge in both respects, but I have a good reason. While the Marvel Cinematic Universe hasn't gained the same following in Japan that's got the US, it's still got something of a following, and this has been reflected by an increase in the amount of superhero anime and manga that has come out since the release of the first Iron Man movie. That said, Japanese superhero fiction isn't exactly anything new. While tokusatsu series like Kamen Rider and the Super Sentai series don't map to the same superhero archetypes that we see in Western comics, they are still superhero stories nonetheless. Further, series like Cutie Honey and Sailor Moon, and the shows that came after them, took the concept of the Magical Girl series and applied some of the concepts of the superhero on top of them. And in the same way that superheroes have always been a part of anime in some form or another, superhero RPGs have always been a part of tabletop role-playing. Hell, one of the first non-fantasy RPGs was a superhero game, Villains and Vigilantes, and numerous superhero games have come out since then, covering various tones of superhero stories and with various rule systems with various degrees of complexity. I'm focusing in particular on Steve Kenson, as he had made superhero games which run the gamut of the complexity, from very light and fluffy to super duper crunchy, and in particular I'm going to cover 3 titles: Champions, Mutants and Masterminds, and Icons. Champions is an RPG that is crunchier than peanut brittle. It uses the hero system, which has a level of mechanical complexity that allows players to make any character, up to and including a hyper-intelligent shade of the color blue, if they so choose. It provides players with a tremendous amount of choice in how they decide to make their characters, but this level of complexity can be tremendously intimidating to new players, so keep that under advisement if that's your pick. On the other hand, if you want to represent the breadth of the powers in the anime and manga and the game's mechanics, in terms of the fact that a character shoots a laser out of their belly button, and that's reflected in the rules, to how Aida's super speed works, Champions gives you a toolkit with all the parts to build those characters out mechanically. The problem is it's a very large, complicated toolkit, and there isn't necessarily a lot of direction. There, but not as much. Icons is at the other end of the spectrum, being more rules light. It allows the players a lot of freedom to define what their characters' powers are and how they work, without adding a lot of complexity to the mix. This makes things a little more loose, leading to the GM having to do a little more work on the fly, but, on the other hand, having the powers be more free-form means that the flavor behind the character's powers don't have to be codified in the rules on your character sheet the same way, allowing players the flexibility to develop characters with their own quirks, no pun intended, without having to dig into the rules. Finally, in the middle of the spectrum is Mutants and Masterminds. The first edition version of the game uses a variant of the D20 system, which is what was used for D&D 3rd Edition and Pathfinder. Since then, it's gone off in its own direction, while still using a structure that's kind of familiar. That means if you know D&D, how stats and skills work there, you can go to Mutants and Masterminds with a head start on how the game is played. Thus, anything you have to learn is based less on having to learn how to play the whole game, and more on how the rules that you are already familiar with have been adjusted for playing a superhero game. This level of familiarity, and with more of a balance between crunch and fluff, can allow for players to create heroes that feel the way they want, mechanically, without having to filter through a giant pile of system parts in order to create that character. All 3 of these games are available as PDFs from DriveThruRPG, and at the very least, Mutants and Masterminds and Champions are available from Amazon. If you like Tiger Mask W, you might like Wild World Wrestling. There are a bunch of pro wrestling RPGs out there, and generally they focus on replicating the tone and thematic elements of real-world, as seen on TV, pro wrestling. Whether it's the soap opera action in the WWE, the more grungy elements of the plots that you see in indie promotions like Ring of Honor, or the sports with drama that you get in Japanese pro wrestling. But none of that holds a candle tonally to Tiger Mask W. Tiger Mask W has anime-level melodrama, which means everything feels bigger than life to a much more dramatic aesthetic, and all the personal stakes feels all that much bigger. Consequently, a lot of conventional pro wrestling RPGs don't work at getting that concept across. However, Wild World Wrestling uses the same system as Apocalypse World and Dungeon World, which gives the game a lot more mechanical flexibility. So you can do something as grandiose as Tiger Mask W without being shackled the same way to doing storylines that have to be structured like a conventional pro wrestling storyline. Wild World Wrestling is available for purchase from DriveThruRPG. That's another 6 games. If you're looking for more recommendations or have some recommendations of your own, please feel free to post them in the comments below. Links to all the games I have mentioned previously are in the doobly-doo. Amazon.com links are referral links, so using those will help support the show. Speaking of supporting the show, I am definitely going to do another one of these in the future at some point. But if there are particular shows or games you want me to do recommendations based on, or just want me to show another one of these sooner, please consider backing my Patreon. The link will also be in the show notes and at the very end of the show. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please like this video and subscribe to the channel to be notified when new videos come out. If there's something in particular you'd like to see me cover, or just want to get your name in the credits or otherwise help the show, please support my Patreon. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.